Okay, so I will introduce our panelists in the beginning. Our first guest is Aras Nathan Coyle, deutsch-israelische Gesellschaft. Hello. Our second international guest today is Henrik Jensen, Junge Union. Our third guest is Karol Jędruszek. He's a youth delegate of the Republic of Poland to the United Nations. And our fourth panelist is Roy Tshuva from the Council of Youth Movements in Israel, but I don't think, can you hear us right now?
Oh, right, I thought that Alex told you about it.
Okay, I think we have some technical issues, so maybe not to postpone, I will start, and then I think Roy will be able to join us in a matter of minutes or even seconds, I hope. One more information. At the end, of course, there will be an opportunity to ask some questions. I have some issues basically prepared for our meeting, but I hope that we will be able to, make just simple, ongoing, naturally going debate. So of course, don't hesitate to take voice, even if not asking me. The future belongs to young people with an education and the imagination to create. These are the words of Barack Obama, the former US president and Nobel Prize winner. And today we have an opportunity to hear those young voices, the voices of young activists, with visions for future. I'm also personally involved in some organizations, so I think I will also be able to contribute some additional things. Okay, so I will start with very first thing, because what would you say basically is the role of youth organizations in building country-to-country ties, and are Polish, German, and Israeli, so this triangle, relations a good example? Let's start.
Yeah, thank you for this question, for having me and inviting me. I think governments do their jobs, and diplomats do their jobs. They talk in their ways and have their ways of doing it and conducting it. So this is the one thing. But what really makes those relations come to life is people on the ground, in the cities, on the campuses, wherever they are. And I think this is, in the case of Germany and Israel, this is what we do. So I would say, yeah, we play a crucial role, and I think it can be overestimated, the role we play, and we should play. I think we need to get a lot more attention from the government, from our foreign ministry, to make our voices heard, because we don't have any political goals or aims. We just want to build the friendship, and this is something they can't decide for us. There's something we, the people, have to decide for ourselves.
Thank you very much.
Okay, would you have anything to add? Because basically when we talk, okay, so basically you mentioned the cooperation between governments and politicians, but basically if you can think of some current also international relations, and also some things that are going on between our countries and organizations between them. So can you think of some examples of some Polish, German, or German-Israeli or Polish-Israeli actions on the youth level?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the invitation and the opportunities to speak here, and for the question. Let me start with a more general thought and then come to the example. I guess the good thing is we say, yeah, governments do their job, but in democracies we also have an opposition. For example, my youth organization, the Junge Union, the mother party, will now go to the opposition, and the networking and the level of the youth organization give an opportunity to also work with youth organizations who are maybe also in the role of opposition right now, and strengthen the relation, and not just the way the government want to head this. And a good example is the Deutschlandtag of the Junge Union, once a year, a weekend in October, and normally we have international guests from, I guess, 150 countries or something like this. So youth organizations from all over the world, of course, also delegates from Poland, and also in the CDS. We in the EDS we work together with your communities or friends here from Poland. For example, Paolo, who couldn't be there today because he's sick. Maybe we see him tomorrow. And I guess so the role of the position taking networking part and these friendship building, because we see pretty often in politics, but also in economics, or even in something like sports or higher education, that personal relations matters more than other arguments. So it's necessary for good connection in the future, maybe when we come back into government, to build these connection.
Yeah, but let me stick with this, because we also, for example, so you are, well, I guess you, Karol, too, have been working in some youth organizations, and from my point of view, sometimes the cases, there are people from many options, political options, but when it comes to working in organizations, they kind of hide it in order to push this organization further for a better good. And here's a question for you to end this issue. Basically, is it really felt even in your youth case, when the main party goes to opposition? Is US Young Union also feeling it somehow, or you just go with further actions, and I mean these social actions, not only political level, but more actions that aim on general economic development?
I guess for sure you will also have issues with this, because it's more unattractive for governments to invite your board. We often see that our federal board only gets invited to countries where Christian Democratic or Conservative Party leads, or countries who have a high interest to be in a good spotlight in the German government.
No, cześć.
And also it's harder to get to raise money from state, from ministries, or also from private economic stakeholders. And finally, maybe you lose some talents. In my hometown in Hamburg, we see it pretty rough. The people in Hamburg are pretty opportunistic and engaged in the party who runs the government, the local government. And so I guess you have at least spontaneous, I think about the three ways where you suffer under it, so there will be a huge influence.
Okay, of course that's reasonable. Okay, so maybe how much impact is it? But okay, we've talked about some examples and so on. But how much impact would you say do youth organizations have on policymakers? Karol?
Okay, so I think the youth nowadays have really much impact on the policymakers. As I see, I'm the youth delegate to United Nations, and I have really big impact. I can talk to the dissidents, I can talk to them about the problem of the young. We have the Council of the young generation in Poland. We are doing such a work to connect young people with the government. So nowadays we have a really big influence on the policymakers, and they see our problems and they connect with us. So it's the best time in our lives to have an impact on policymakers.
Would you add anything?
I mean, the thing is, youth organizations have to represent a certain group and a certain interest, and it depends on how good they do this. For example, Germany is a country that is really changing, and we have, I think, every fourth person in Germany under the age of 30 has a background of migration, where one parent or even they themselves come from another country. So to integrate those people, their interests into civil society, into youth organizations, I think that's also crucial. And this is especially true for our case, where our organization has two goals. The first one is fighting anti-Semitism, and the second one is strengthening German-Israeli relations. And you can imagine that this is something that not every German agrees on first sight, those two things. And especially the people who come from countries where being against Israel and against Jews is something where they, which is what they see on TV, and it's easy for them to think those thoughts. We also have to apply to them and to talk to them to see what they want and how we can reach them. And if we can do that, we will have an impact on politics and an influence.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so basically, also I would like to add something else. Right now we are looking at the first panel. We've talked about this triangle: Poland, Israel, and Germany, but also about the European Union and Israel. And how would you say you can use your experience for the development of these relations to European Union as a whole? Maybe you can give some examples of projects you were recently involved in this cooperation.
Yeah, well, I guess one project, one of the former chairmen over 10 years, Philip Missfelder, died pretty early in the 40s, and then the Youth Union tries to build up a Philip Missfelder forest in Israel because he really high engaged in these relations. But for example, there are also from the federal board, but also normal travels from us, from Hamburg to Israel. But I guess the most important part, and we come back also to the point with the influence of youth organization, the policymakers, is that in Germany it's pretty much state of the art to say the right to exist from Israel is untouchable, but when it came to hard questions, like for example the acceptance of embassy or Jerusalem as a federal capital or something like this, sometimes policymakers in all parties, so also in our party, tend to get a little bit too opportunistic, and then the role of the youth organization, I'm a member of the youth union, is pretty much off, because I am pretty much sure that we are the youth organization which is closest on the side to Israel, is to remember our policymakers in our party that we have to fill this word that we say it's state of the art here in Germany, and with also just with boring work on documents you hand in the federal decision-making progress. So even these small and boring things could be the most important ones, and maybe also the things which you have the most impact on policymakers.
Yeah, Karol, would you like to add anything later?
Yeah, I think the cooperation between Israel and the European Union is between the universities. I see lots of students from Israel in Warsaw or Poznań, so despite the politics, there is a good cooperation.
Yeah. Two things. The first one is German-Polish relations. I think it's not a miracle, but it's crazy. If you ask grandparents or the generation before, even if they could imagine such a close relations between Germany and Poland, I think this is really remarkable, and I'm really thankful for that. And this is also a part of what you guys do here in Poland. Also, we have a lot of French organizations in Germany. They're doing crucial work. And there's even a youth exchange between Poland and Germany, so young Polish people and young Germans will meet. And this is something we're working on in Germany right now, that we will have this also with Israel. Because I think for historical reasons we also need this with Israel, that young Germans meet Israelis and Israelis come to Germany. The second thing about the EU is, to be honest, I think the EU doesn't play a good role when it comes to Israel, to the peace process. For example, we have the case of money from the EU going into hands where we don't know what happens with the money, or the funding of the UNRWA. It's it's a refugee organization, especially for Palestinians and their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And this is something I personally in my organization is really critical, and also Germany pays a lot for this, and I think we need some reforms there, because those organizations that receive funding from the EU but don't do work for peace, for understanding, for tolerance, but rather for hatred against Jews and for so-called martyrdom. This is really problematic, so I think there's a lot to be done in the EU.
If I'm allowed to go shortly into it, I just mentioned the boring work on papers you enter into decision-making process. This is actually a good example of this, because the federal party and the federal government in Germany say, yeah, but they also do humanistic work and we have to give them the money, and we, the youth union, strictly say, and hopefully we can bring it through at the federal level of the CDU too. We want to stop immediately every paying at the UNRWA and say, and we have to find other ways to help them humanistic with other organizations, but this couldn't be an argument. So this is a perfect example also trying to take influence.
Yeah, I think so. Aras, you mentioned one interesting issue about Polish-German relationship, and I would like to just add, I think it's a brilliant example how economical relations can heal some issues, some social issues that still in some aspects seem unsolved, but as Germany is one of the most important Polish trade partners, in this case we can cooperate I think more easily. We are depending on each other on more things, and I think it helps in healing some wounds. And also maybe ending this issue of European Union and Israel, just for quick, because we've talked about Polish and Israeli relationship. How would you basically summarize German and Israeli relationship, like directly? Are there any interesting or maybe harsh issues there? I think it's better from the German side to answer. I will have more questions for Karol in a moment. Don't worry.
Germany and Israel have very good relations, so that's clear. Every party in Germany that wants to be taken seriously says something like the security of Israel is Staatsräson. So this is normal. Everyone does it, and especially regarding intelligence cooperation, military cooperation, we just had a multinational practice in Israel with Germany, with the Luftwaffe. Very successful, so there's a lot going on, and we have close relations. This is not a question. But still, I think there's more that can be done, because it's not only about Israel, the state of Israel, the relations with Israel, but it's also that we have to take care of the enemies of Israel. And if you look at the news, if you see, for example, what the Iranian regime does in the whole region, but also regarding Israel, it's very worrying. Building a nuclear arsenal, missile program which is illegal, and the activities with Hezbollah in the north. And I could go on for another hour what the regime does, which is really problematic. And still, we as Germans are keen to have good relations with the Iranian regime. This is something I think the words we say are good, and there's lots going on that's good, but we also have to stand with Israel and against the enemies of Israel. And we always say, we have to fight anti-Semitism in Germany. Of course I agree, but to fight doesn't mean to fight and not just to talk. And the spirit of fighting really anti-Semitism, and really fighting people who are anti-Semitic, this is what I think is a bit lacking in Germany, and what I would wish for.
Okay, Henry, could you add anything from your German side, or?
Yeah, I can completely agree. I guess in the last 16 years of Chancellor Merkel, we lost a little bit the ability to have a point and protect this point, and we just want to have a compromise. And I guess especially in the Iran topic, this is crucial, because we just want to have this compromise and don't want to stand our point, and I hope we will go back to this soon. And another problem I want to touch is with the public media in Germany when Israel were under attack from Gaza, and they struck back. Sometimes even in the public media they take these wording from Palestinian organizations, and in social media then you often see, even from people I went to school with, which I thought never been pretty political and don't do anything political, then they talk about the Holocaust happened there or something like this, and then politicians say this is crucial and this is not okay, but we don't fight, in my opinion, strong enough against this upcoming climate in Germany, being standing more on the side of Palestine and not of Israel. And I think CDU is the only party who say what one reason to that is, and it's the Muslimic migration, and we have to go deeper into Muslimic anti-Semitism too. But the problem is when you say this in Germany, you're often directly a Nazi.
First, I see basically more political issues. So maybe I have one last extremely connected to bigger politics question. I think like Carol will might be helpful in this case. So basically, how is there anything that the United Nations can do in order to stimulate this our triangle, and also maybe European Union and Israel? And is it something that without the United Nations would be impossible?
Of course, I'm in contact with the youth delegate from Germany and from Israel. We can cooperate with each other, and I think the United Nations can make a crucial role because we are involved in the United Nations. United Nations is a peaceful organization and is helping us to stimulate economic growth, to discuss with each other. So I think United Nations can be the bridge when we can go future with our project.
Of course. Okay, so we've talked a bit about some bigger political issues, but coming back to youth organizations, there's also I think one crucial thing, one crucial issue. Basically, what would you say to a young person who is not certain about joining youth organizations, and also basically how to convince the young generation to engage in basically international cooperation initiatives? How would you deal with this question?
I think you have to understand how they think, what they feel is important. I mean, at least to me, it came not as a shock but as a surprise how many people became active. Like I think it was shortly before Corona, with the climate movement Fridays for Future. I mean, this was really something taking the country, taking everyone with them. And I think young people are very political. They can be really, really political. Often they lack experience, of course, and they lack like the deep knowledge people have that are into those topics for a long time already. But they want to do something, they want to change something, and this, I think, is something where we can give a platform for. We can say, okay, you want to do something? Here, come to us. We are active, and you can become active with us and do something good for the world. And I think also regarding Israel, I'm sorry I'm coming back to Israel all the time.
Of course, the topic, so I think it's okay.
I think the generation now has a huge chance because the generations before were the generations of the perpetrators, like the grandparent generation, the parents' generation. They had to deal with the question of guilt. I mean, the generation of our parents not anymore so much, but still they had to deal with their parents and their guilt. So this was like a generation that had a different approach to Israel, to Jewish life, and to all those topics. I think the new generation now is a generation that sees on Instagram and TikTok videos and Snapchat of Tel Aviv and the beach and hummus and people playing makot, and they say, okay, I want to be there, I want to go there, I want to check it out, and they see the pride and they want to go there. So this is like, those are the kinds of things I think we also have to address if we want to reach those people in the young generation.
Yeah, I think it's generally globalization is a good example how some issues can support and healing some wounds, but also building new relations. Gentlemen, would you add anything? I think you have plenty to add.
I think the COVID-19 will be very helpful. We learned that we don't need to meet in person. We can do a lot of remote. So I think for international projects, the COVID-19 can help in the future.
Henrik, would you like to add anything on the topic of convincing young people, especially when you are from the position of the organization that is like from one political side?
Yeah, I guess that or moreover the new younger generation, often called something like a cosmopolitical generation, and I guess this is a little bit wrong. I would call it an international generation, because cosmopolitical implements you want to leave borders behind your nation states and so on and so on. And I don't see that. I see people who are interested in seeing the world, and even social media make it much more easier to see the world or stay in contact with people from all over the world. And when youth organizations want to help people with their political engagement, because I guess the main role of a youth organization is also the chance to get this knowledge and this experience in kind of a safe space, much more safer than Twitter at least, then we have to work on this difference between what we understand as maybe cosmopolitical youth and international youth, and give some incentives regarding to this topic, and then international and also German-Polish or Polish-German relation will become much more important because of the economic and historic interdependence.
Of course. So maybe I will end because we have still a few minutes left, but I will leave this moment maybe for some questions from audience. I have one last time you were Henrik, asking some questions, maybe now someone else will ask you. But I think we would not be able to end this debate without the matter of future. So I will maybe ask this question this way: do you think that in a place where now on the one hand we have a this globalization generally, and especially digital globalization, so you've mentioned some social networks and so on and so on, the COVID, and we can connect without any problems. But on the other side, we have also noticed in especially some regions some dislike about the technology, and also we have noticed some rise of some nationalist movements around, I must say, I think around the world is quite notable. So basically, do you think that there is a tendency to still develop international cooperation initiatives? Personally, I think yes. But what would you say about the future? What can we expect, and basically, how can we sometimes counter some issues that will help us?
I mean, social media can definitely help to meet new people. For example, if I'm a young person checking TikTok all the time, and then having an image of, for example, Israeli, that he's a baby killer, and then I see a TikTok of him dancing, then I know, okay, it's a person like me. I also like to dance on TikTok, so not personally, but in this image. So there's a huge chance, I think, but also at the same time there's the problem of disinformation and of images being created that are very biased, that give seemingly easy explanations for really difficult topics. So, for example, the Israelis doing the same as the Nazis did to the Jews. So there's like those arguments that come up and that are really hard to counter, because you need a lot of like knowledge and patience to get to know the topic. I mean, it's not that hard also, but this is like a huge problem, and especially when it comes to emotional topics, then people are really in the danger of taking wrong information or not fact-checking it. So this is something we really have to take care of, and I think this is also a topic of education, that a young generation learns how to deal with social media and has a trust in our values and gets raised with them.
Would you add anything, gentlemen? This topic?
Okay, I don't agree with about nationalism. I think there are much more young people that are not cosmopolitan but country agnostic. So they don't care where are you from, but they know they are Polish or something. So they are not cosmopolitan, but they are country agnostic. And I think lots of young people are well educated, so they know the nationalism is not a good movement. So I think it's won't work, and I hope. What is more, I'm a big fan of new technology, and I see lots of potential in it. And I think in the future it will be helpful for us.
So it also comes back to education and to communication. Would you have anything?
In Germany we have the 16 so-called Bundesländer, so the organizational organs, and in Sachsen, one of the Eastern Europe Bundesländer, but those who are economically the best, young people even from just Western Germany go to there. In the last elections, the AfD was the strongest party even by the first voters and the voters under 30, especially then, when by the older voters the CDU was the strongest party. So we have, especially when you go outside the big cities, these tendency, and they are also well-educated people often. I guess the problem, especially in Germany and probably in every Western country, because we have the same demographic structure, is not directly related to globalization. I guess it's more related to demographic, because polity is often made for older people. In German satire shall one say they care more about last voters than about first voters. A little bit bad humor, but I think it's shown good the problem. And then they tend to go into this nationalist movement and against globalization. But the thing they fucked up about is not globalization, it's these demographic problems that policymakers make to less politics for youth generation within the country, and this does not lead to globalization or technology, and so I would disagree in the analysis why, but I'm pretty optimistic that maybe in the future this will change too, or at least I hope.
Yes, of course. Okay, gentlemen, if you have any comments, would you like to add basically on our topic? Now, I think it's the time. We are running out of time a bit, but I think that for the last few minutes we can devote to questions. Of course, if there are any questions from the audience, so I think now is the time. It's also possible that there won't be, any question in this case. Okay, I don't see any questions. Maybe some people are typing online, but basically we don't have any options. So maybe later we can see in the comments, and if you wish, you can answer them. Okay, so basically, I think that I think.
Sorry, I have one last comment, not about the topic specifically, but about the conference. I really just realized half an hour ago, how bad the relations between. Not that bad, of course, between Israel and Poland are, and I think it's really a shame. And as much as I worry about the relations between the two countries, the more I'm happy that you guys show up here, come here, and show that you care about the relations. And I want to say thank you to all of you, and of course to the organizers for doing this, because I think bringing in civil society, bringing in economic aspects, can help really to solve diplomatic problems.
Of course. So basically, I think the good some summary of today's day, not only this panel, will be communicating in a proper way. This the way.
Yes, yes, I hear you.
Yeah, it's been like 45 minutes, but I think that Ray has heard us right now. But I think we are just finishing our panel, so maybe tomorrow or next year there will be an occasion to redo it. So I think that was ours. I think that was
Do
ours.
you see me?
No.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm from Israel. So unfortunately, I weren't able to be there with
think
you
it's the recording,
guys.
so-
Although 2 years ago it was so interesting to take part at the first seminar. Am I right? Was it the first? No. Unfortunately, technology wasn't on our side, so I'm not so able to hear what you are saying there or even see you. But I want to say a few words. The first one is thank you. Thank you for including us, and thank you for thinking that the youth movements here in Israel are the right ones to be partner with you. Youth movements here are very much involved in bilateral and trilateral programs, and I hope that now when the skies are a little bit more open, we will be able to even meet in person and have more programs, more joint programs. So that's one thing. The second one is that we understand, or hopefully you guys spoke about it before, the youth, the teenagers are our future. If we are not going to invest more energy, more resources in the movements, we are not able to have a better future. And this is our role at the leadership to make sure that we are being responsible for one second, please. Being responsible for the future and make sure that we are doing everything in our power in order to have a better future for these teenagers and for the world. The partnership between our nations and between our organizations is so important for us, and we very much hope that we will be able to make it happen very soon. So thank you again for inviting us to take part, and hopefully we are able to take part on the next seminar, the next conference in person in Poland or maybe in Israel. Thank you so much.